What a warm welcome.
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Hello again. You still here? Good. Hey, Julie.
Hey, Linus.
It's hard, right?
I know. He was telling me that you just can't really see the audience because there's these really bright lights, and everyone's a little more washed out.
We're squinting.
Yeah.
So let's start. Like, who? Can you tell the audience a bit about who you are?
Who am I? I don't even know who I am sometimes. Okay, but I guess, if you want the rap sheet, I started my career as a computer scientist. I went to Meta, which I still think of in my head as Facebook, very early on when it was about 100 people. And I helped scale that organization. I was there for about 14 and a half years, ultimately leading design, user experience, and some of the front-end teams for the Facebook app core experience. So I worked on everything from feed, photos, like buttons, platform, all of those different things. And then about 5 years ago, I decided to go out and see the broader world. And in that time since, I've started a company. It is called Sundial, and we are essentially trying to be like Cursor for analytics and democratize getting data insights for every single person who is a decision maker at a company. And I also write a lot on the side. So I've written a book for new managers called The Making of a Manager. And I have a blog that really helps me think and try to make clear various ideas that are popping around in my head.
That's accomplished. I think that's worth a round of applause, right? Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm actually super happy to get to meet you in person because I've kind of followed your story a bit on the sidelines as someone that's into tech and into the world of tech in general. So you actually became a manager at Facebook pretty young when you were 25. And what's one myth about leadership that you wish someone would have shattered for you earlier?
Oh gosh, the number one thing is you don't have to always have all the answers. I think that having watched all these movies of bosses and decision makers, and they always seem so authoritative. They always seem like they knew what to do, and so if somebody was confused, I felt like the boss should be like, no guys, this is what we're going to do it this way, and go. And so when I was 25 and I'm managing a team of designers, many of whom had more experience than me and were frankly far better designers than me, I had enormous imposter syndrome because of this, because I had this mentality like, I need to know more than them, but I don't. So like, oh, let me pretend like I know more. Unfortunately, we all know that when you pretend to be something that you're not, everyone can see it and feel it, including you. And I do wish that somebody had sat me down. It's like, look, you don't need to just say you don't know. Just ask for people's help. It's okay. And that's why it's one of the number one things I want to impart upon people in the making of a manager. And managers are made, not born. And you don't have to know all the answers.
Yeah, I wish someone told me that early. I mean, I still personally have like the largest kind of imposter syndrome feeling every single day, whatever I do, even being here. But challenging oneself and doing things that you are afraid of, I think makes it easier to kind of rise above it and be like, okay, well, everyone's an imposter, so what's one more to it?
Exactly.
It's not a big deal.
There's a connection there, among us imposters.
Like, come on, guys, it's fine. You're all safe here. We do an imposter meeting afterwards outside. In the making of a manager, you talked about the importance of self-awareness. How do you cultivate self-awareness in an environment that is moving so fast, and in particular like tech? Like, how do you actually take care of that?
Yeah, and there's two things that I think are super important when it comes to self-awareness. The first is feedback, because self-awareness is not just like what's in your own head, it's how you think of yourself calibrated against other people that you work with, or we're social creatures. So much of what we do and what we accomplish is in our relationships or collaboration with other people. And oftentimes I think we can go through life thinking we're this, wanting to be that, but not realizing whether that is actually how other people perceive us. And the only way to know and to test that assumption is you just got to ask other people for feedback. And you hopefully can share feedback back to them. Like, I think of, two humans, right? Like we're essentially mirroring back to one another what we see of one another. And so what I see of you is not all of you. It's a very small slice, but I have got some unique knowledge, and same for you. And so every single interaction, if we think of it, like, how can we test what we know? How can we share what we know and make it more open? That is one of the most important ways, I think, to be able to develop and get a better sense of who you are and how you show up in the world. I think the second pillar is to look internally. So for me, a lot of that has been journaling, but for other people, it could be talking about yourself or sharing hopes, dreams. This thing happened yesterday. Sometimes we do this, of course, with the people in our lives, like our closest friends or family. Like, this thing happened yesterday, and I was so frustrated, and why was I frustrated? And just asking those questions, like, what about that situation made me feel that way? And reflecting or having that time to process, okay, things happen, I feel certain things, I think certain things, but what, are they true? Like, is there a pattern? I think all of those insights are what help us then be able to get to, I think, what the ultimate prize of self-awareness is, which is intentionality. Like, you can show up in the world more of how you intend to, because you're not deluded because you think you're something other than how other people see you, and you've noticed and observed many, many unconscious patterns that you now can choose whether you want to go into the world behaving or thinking or doing things like that.
Yeah, it's quite common, right? That you just live life on autopilot and you don't really, you feel quite intentionless. Days just pass and you're like, what am I doing here? I don't know. I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And it's like, you got to find that purpose. You got to find that, like, why am I here for me? Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, and there's so much to react to. There's so much noise in the world. And if you don't know yourself and what you stand for, especially with AI, I think a lot of that has been the conversation, even of this conference, is it's hard to feel like you have solid grounding. And I think the feeling that we're going for is sort of like we're a sturdy tree.
Yeah.
We got our roots in the ground. We're planted. We know where we came from. We have a great ecosystem with the soil and the environment, but we're not just like floating around wherever the wind carries us.
Yeah, and then someday still it seems like AI is making the ground all this kind of fluid, meshy, gooey swamp, and you're like, where are my roots? They're just like washed away. You're talking a bit about feedback. Like, how do you do good feedback? How do you give good feedback? And how do you receive good feedback?
I think the most important thing goes back to intention. So feedback works really well if the intention is about helping and doing things in a way where there is respect for the other person, right? So regardless of what's going on, like, you did something that really pissed me off, but if I go back to but I respect you as a person, as an individual, as a human, and I think my feedback may help you and it may help me and it will help our relationship. That's the reason. If the why is that, I think that's the most important thing, right? Because then the way it comes off will be, even if I mess up, I say the wrong words, at least the feeling is there, right? That feeling of respect, that care, and the desire to try to make a relationship great. So that's like definitely the number one thing. Like, you could say all the right things, but if the feeling is not there, it will land flat, and you will know it. So that's the most important. But I think the second thing is to probably lead with some vulnerability. I know especially for the people where maybe we don't yet have a trusting relationship. Obviously, if we trust each other, it's much easier to say, and we all know that. It's easier to give feedback to, like, your mother or your brother or your best friend than a stranger, hopefully. I know, actually, now that I think of it, maybe not. But what I was going to say is that if like, let's say I'm worried you're going to take it badly, or I'm worried that we don't have that strong foundation, then leading with a little bit of vulnerability, where what I say is, I'm really nervous to say this, and I'm nervous I'm going to say it the wrong way, and I don't want you to be pissed off, and I don't want you to hate me, but I feel like it's important for me to say this because I really care about our relationship. If I just lead with that, right, I'm sort of going to the table with all of my jittery feelings, And I think the other person is much more likely to then listen because they know that I'm also taking a risk here.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And personally, I love feedback. I'm like a feedback guy. I love taking feedback. I also love giving feedback. I think it's like when the other person understands that it comes from a place of understanding, a place of wanting to do good. For me, at least, that makes it easier to both give and receive. And I think earlier in my career, at least, like if I look back when I was, I don't know, 25, 27, 28, 30, beyond, there has been times where like I've had a really hard time taking feedback. Still are. Like, I think we're sensitive creatures.
Yeah.
But it's good that you mentioned that. Like, if the person giving feedback leads with sensitivity, then it's easier for the other person to kind of contract and take it in. I'm wearing this. This is a little AI device. If you've seen it around, this is kind of my augmented memory. And you also have one of these devices, but you're not wearing it.
No.
It seems to me that these kind of like passive AI devices that are constantly listening and taking in context, one of the key things actually this device is doing is giving me feedback. And it's unsolicited and it comes from a thing. It's not a person. And it helped me already quite tremendously. And I'm wondering, like, if in the future, perhaps your AI and my AI will have a little bit of a side session and then present to us. Like,
You guys are going to hit it off. No, don't talk about this topic.
all right, next. Okay, cool. No, I think like we're just seeing the very beginning. I think there's dark sides and bright sides to all technology, like all tools. And I'm just super surprised about this stuff and feedback in general.
I just to add on to that, I've been doing a lot too with, I think it's so interesting. I use ChatGPT a lot, and I always love to ask, hey, based on what I said, like, where do you think I'm wrong? Or what do you think I'm not seeing? Or where are my blind spots? Or what do you think I should double down on in my strengths? And it does a pretty good job of like of actually synthesizing across all that. And again, it's one perspective, right? It doesn't get to see everything. It's not listening to all of my conversations, but I go back to like everything, every interaction is like it's a reflection. So the more that we ask, the more I think we can then take into that picture and use it for ourselves.
Yeah, I think this is something that's absolutely fascinating at this time because from very early kind of ChatGPT, even GPT-3 kind of times, I've been super amazed by how much AI can read into what's not there, how much it can fill out the blanks. So like even with a sparse, coarse, kind of fragmented contextual awareness of what's going on, it's really good at like making it fully contextual based on a little bit of information about me. So like I think we're gonna kind of run into a new era where like we have, and it's kind of maybe very pressurized, like it could cause a lot of problems as well. But like for me, for example, I think this is just going to help me become a much more attuned individual where like actually the feedback is not coming from someone. I don't have to worry about their intentions because this is kind of like an intentionless device.
We hope.
Yeah, well, we hope. Actually, one of the weirdest things with this is like I worked for like a few days and then like I woke up one morning and it said, Linus, one of the things that you should do better is to be more aware and present with your kids. And I'm like, ooh, that stung. And then it went beyond. So I went, I opened the app and I checked and it's like at 8:54 a.m. when your daughter said something about fruit to school, you neglected it and started talking about home renovations.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, whoa. All right. And then I just went through this transcript and I listened back to the audio because it saves the audio. And I'm like, yeah. I need to improve on that. That was really bad. And in the moment, I didn't think about it. Life just goes on. We just do these things. And I think a lot of the things that like we don't think about are super easy to manipulate and change. And we want to change them. I don't want to be a bad dad or I don't want to be a dad that's not present. But it's really hard to get that feedback because your partner might not give it or your partner might just be included in the same kind of conversation and don't see it as well. So it was really interesting for me to have that kind of experience. So
yeah, I do think the most valuable feedback is I always go back to like, what is good feedback? And if I told you something, you already knew it, yeah, okay, that's helpful. It confirms something. But I think the most valuable feedback is when it makes someone aware of something that they weren't aware of. And then after they're aware of it, they're glad to be aware because it helps them become the kind of person they want to be.
Yeah,
Even though it can be hard, right? Like, there's like a ego thing, you know, where like, oh shit, like, did I
100%.
mess up? But when you look back on it, hopefully it'll be like, that really helped.
Yeah, and with examples too.
Yeah.
Like in a work environment, it's a lot easier to be like, hey, I didn't like this thing that happened because of X, Y, and Z, and here's one thing that I think you did wrong or that you could have improved. Right? It's a clear thing where you give someone the example. And this was exactly the same thing. I actually got more than that example. So I'm actually a more horrible dad than dependent led on to. But that's fine. I'm gonna improve. But it helps because then you can like, oh yeah, exactly, that's it. Like I understand now, because if in the heat of the moment when you're getting feedback, it's easy to just become kind of a defensive.
Yes.
And cramp up. All right, let's not just get stuck on the feedback stuff and me being a horrible dad. Let's move on. So, taste, design. I'm a designer by trade. I've spent 20 years designing products, 19, almost 20. And I wonder for you, like, what does good taste in product design mean? And is it something that can be taught, or does it only develop through experience?
I think I define taste as you have a pretty well-calibrated bar on what does exceptional look like versus pretty good versus mediocre versus not so great in whatever domain or discipline. And you tend to be right a lot. And by right, what I mean is it will be validated by other people over the fullness of time. So if you have great taste in product design, you're more likely to be predictive of the fact that like if you see an app and like this is really a great app and it's going to work, then later on we all like realize it works, or so then you'll have like pretty good taste in that particular dimension. Or if you're the first one to be like, wow, this movie is amazing and you will love it, and then you watch it and you're like, yes, I loved it. It means I understood your taste and I understood enough about this movie and I could accurately be able to predict what that is. So that's how I think about that.
So today we're in this kind of uncertainty era of sorts, where not only can the machines do a lot of things for us, but we can also learn a lot from the machines. And if you're like a new designer today, kind of coming into this ever-changing and ever rapidly changing world, what kind of mindset shift would you try to instill early to them today to try to like hang on and be like, how do you even fit in? Like where do you insert yourself?
So I think there's two things. The first is if you want to get really good at anything and you have good taste in anything, you kind of have to be obsessed with it or put in a lot of reps for it, right? Nobody goes like, if I've never heard opera before, I'm not going to suddenly waltz in and be like, wow, I know what the best opera is. Like I just don't know enough. I haven't listened to all of them. And so there's just a knowledge building that has to happen for anything. And I hope that a young person, would come in. Like today we have so many better tools for learning. And because, what AI I think is really good at is like kind of being like the average or maybe like slightly above average. Again, it's getting smarter and smarter, but right now I think the funniest comedian can still make you laugh far more than whatever jokes LLMs are providing, and similarly with design and similarly with code, right? It's like not quite to the level of the best people, but it does know a lot. It knows average or better than average. So that means if you go into an area and you don't know that much, AI can tell you a lot, right? AI can be a guide that helps you ideally learn as much as fast as possible. And I think it can do it even better than traditional methods because it's particularly good at translation. I think this is one of the key things that LM do, which is, if it knows about me, like I'm a visual learner, I do better with short text. I don't want to see too much on the screen, and I like metaphors and analogies, that it can take a complex concept, which maybe otherwise, maybe for you want to learn something through like looking at math equations, right? Maybe not because you're a designer, but I know my co-founder who is like a true analytical mind and like a PhD, like that's how he learns best. And so we all have to read the same textbook. AI can explain things to me in a way, and if I don't understand, I can ask it, and like we can just really ramp up how quickly we learn and get to, let's say, you know, a medium or maybe slightly better than medium context. But then I think we still have to like be good observers, and we have to talk and look at what the best is, and commit, right? And like build and try, because so much of learning also comes from trying and failing and trying and failing, or sometimes succeeding, but it's like the reps that you put in. And I think there's no shortcut to going out and still finding a thing. It doesn't have to be the same thing that we did before. You know, before, I know when I was a designer, so much of my earlier years of design was just figuring out like, how does Photoshop work, and how do you make like rounded corners? And there's like so much of the technicalities and the mechanics of just making the screen what we want. And of course, Figma comes along, makes a lot of that much easier. Now we have AI tools, makes a lot of that easier. But for me, the core thing is like, it allows us to do higher and higher level design.
Exactly. I think this is something that if I were to look back and tell my kind of 19-year-old self that was just coming into design, like how am I going to do this? I would be like, today it's a lot easier than it was then, because like all the tooling is there, and like the way to access information, and like getting, like you said, like just getting personalized kind of education. I spent so much of my kind of early days just doing the most annoying and boring jobs you can imagine. Like I've rotoscoped like 10,000 products. Like if you've rotoscoped anything, please raise your hand. Okay, you removed backgrounds manually in Photoshop, please raise your hands. All right, and then like if you made GIF like animations for websites, raise your hands. Yeah. Okay. So I'm like that old that I use tables in HTML and like transparent GIFs to move things around, and I'm just seeing today like how I spent 90% of my time back then doing the tedious work, and 10% doing the stuff that like actually improved me as a designer. Whereas today it feels like people can do 90% of the stuff that helps them improve as a designer, and 10% of the tedious stuff. So if I would give myself advice, it would be like, hey, go out and play.
Yeah.
Like, be like that 5-year-old in the playground and just like take swings, like do things, because like we don't no longer need to do the boring stuff.
Yes. But it's also true that what we think isn't, like, maybe back then I didn't know that that was the boring stuff. It's also true today that all of this prompt tuning or whatnot is what in the future we'll say is the boring stuff, right? Like that's the thing with technology. Like we're always able to, it helps us elevate, and we now have a new canvas for creativity and for design.
Of course, yeah, everything is time relevant, right?
Yes.
Like everything that we do today, we'll look back at this and be like, oh, this was the Tetris of 2025. I think about this a lot. I got 2 small kids, right, 3 and 5. They don't get to use screens. We had them using screens for a bit, but then that turned really bad. So like as a parent to other parents, I'm not trying to impose here, but like, and I don't put any shame on people that use screens with the kids, but try as an experiment to just say no to all screens. Like this is a hard stop. This is like getting someone off heroin. Like hard stop. And the change that we witness as parents is it's insane. Like I don't have any good words for it because it's so black and white. My 5-year-old particularly, she cannot even, and she learned reading and writing at the age of 4 because of screen. So I'm very grateful for that. But she cannot deal with some of the stress that it causes when the device gets removed. So I think the kids growing up today, screens or no screens, they are just wired completely differently because they are expecting so much more. They love technology, both my kids do, and they already take a lot of things for granted. We translate things with ChatGPT, we live in Spain, they speak 4 languages, so it's like a bit of a mess. But to the point, it's just like, it's very crazy to compare today and the relevancy of what's hard today versus 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So when we kind of look at how kind of AI is involved in everything today, both from like product design, decision making, where do you think human designers will bring the most value in, let's say, the coming, it's hard to say decade, but 5 years?
I think the thing that will always be human is, because today I think we still think of AI as a tool, right? It's helping us get stuff done, but we still need to be the ones to figure out what do we want done. Like the intention is human, and AI can give you all the data, all the insights, but insights and data only matter if you have like an intention or a goal, like a thing that matters. And so I think the question is more important than ever, which is like, what is that? Like what do we stand for? What is the thing that we believe is good or great or wonderful, and then how do we utilize the tools, AI, or whatever, all of this magical capabilities to help us get there?
What are we going to do?
What do you mean, you and me?
Yeah, well, you and me, what are we going to do? Hey, guys, what are we going to do?
Well, I can speaking for myself. I think that one of the things that has been really on my mind is like, okay, so if there's outcomes, right? I used to be the kind of person who's very goal oriented, like, okay, like at the end of this year, I want this many customers, this many in sales, whatever. I still do that, but more and more important, I think it's trying to reflect more on like, okay, what's the feeling, like what's the energy? Because I think it's very hard for AI, or until I think we get like her robots and they look like humans or whatnot. But the energy in the spirit of like what is the feeling is still so important to me. So like wanting to convey, for example, a sense of warmth in the things that I do, in the things that I build, wanting to live in a way that is always about taking more risk, like being courageous, right? That's really important for me. I think it's important for all of us to be able to feel like a sense of progress, a sense of pride. And then lastly, for me, it's also depth. Like I want to go deeper. I want to not understand things at the surface level. Like there's so much to understand about the world and each other, and like I'll never have the time to learn everything, but there's like something that also feels quite beautiful about the pursuit. And so these aren't goal, like there's no day where I'll be like, it's done, like a check, but it's like a way of being. And I think that asking ourselves that, which is a very individual question as well. And then once we know it individually, I think it becomes clear then for like, okay, if I'm going to build a company, what does that mean? If I'm going to be like a participant in our government, in our community, what does that mean? If I'm going to be involved in even my kids' school, like what does that mean? But it all starts from, I think, trying to ask myself, like, what is it fundamentally? Like, where do those roots go?
So you're currently building, well, you're a founder, you're building your own team right now. You have your company Sundial, and how are you intentionally designing your culture now compared to maybe prior? Or are you intentionally designing it at all?
Oh, yeah. I think about this a lot because I think it's such an interesting design problem. And it goes back to what we were saying about like, I see all of these things as design problems. Like, when I was young, I started from designing a screen to like a feature to like a system, like a design system, to an app, and now to a company. And they're all design problems, right? They're all just like I'm using the same muscles, trying to be creative, look at the constraints, figure and understand like the levers. And so designing culture is one very near and dear to my heart. And for me, it's about like, how do I create an environment in which all of us can do work that we're really proud of, that is high quality work, which high quality work means that it goes out and it impacts the lives of other people. And it goes back to a couple things that I think, I worked at Meta before, and I actually think Meta has an incredible culture in a lot of ways, like focus on transparency, a lot of care for people, a lot of ambition, like dreaming big, tolerance of mistakes and failures in an effort to know that like that's part of what we have to do in order to experiment and try. Like we have to tolerate some degree of being wrong. And so a lot of those are still very near and dear to my heart. I think if there's one thing that is different for me, I probably focus a lot more on the process. Like I care so much about the way that we do things, not just like what got done, but like how did it feel? I would love, of course, yes, everything that we do as a team, like I want to be wildly successful and hit all of our various goals, but I also want people to believe and feel like this was such a positive chapter of their lives. I want them to feel like they learned and they grew. I want them to feel like they did stuff that they were proud of. So it's like the way that it feels to create something is very important in our culture.
Feels a lot like you want to go to work and just be surrounded by people that you love working with and just having a really good time.
And
No?
that is exactly what my co-founder Chandra and I said. We want to, like, we're at the stage in our careers. We've been very lucky. We get a lot of freedom, right? I think that's what AI also, it's destabilizing, but one thing it provides is like more freedom for us to choose. And so we found ourselves at that crux in our careers, and we said, well, we can do anything. What do we want to do? And it turns out it was exactly what you said. It's just wake up every day, work with people we like on problems that we find interesting, and try to do our best work. And I don't think that conflicts with being successful. Like, I think sometimes people are like, well, should we be supportive, or should we be performance oriented? And I don't think there is to me, this isn't an either or. Like, you can do both. And in fact, I think it's hard for us to love a job if we don't think we're doing very good work. Like, I think all humans, we want to be creative, we want to be ambitious, like we want to do things that matter.
Yeah.
And so it's like not a trade-off. Like why don't we try and do both, but continue. We're not gonna. It's not easy. Like, we clearly make a lot of mistakes, but as long as we have that ethos, maybe that pursuit of, that's maybe all we can do.
I think a lot of people really want that. Like, they say it's a life goal for many to like have that rare kind of like maybe it's not that rare, but like it's an aspiration, no? Like to really love what you're doing and kind of wake up every day and be super excited for the day to not end. No? I know we're a bit over time. Maybe someone could slap another few minutes on that timer. That would be very helpful. Because I think we do have a good conversation. I just want to keep it going for a little bit more.
Oh,
Thank you. That's the magic of...
we got 4:43, guys.
Yeah, we're going to keep it short. Anyone in the audience want to ask Julie something? Rourke.
I think you speak beautifully, by the way. I think you have like real conviction. I think you just talk very well. I think
Oh, thank you.
talks very well put together. So thank you for that. Very interesting talk. I'd love to know your opinion on potentially, you know a lot about working relationships and how to juggle those. I've just started an agency, and I have one of my best friends next to me, and we're just going to go into work
Yeah.
together. So how do you feel like juggling that kind of relationship can work in a work situation?
I wish you guys the best. I hope that it's a ton of fun in your adventures ahead. Having gone through that, like my co-founder and I were very close, and we really liked each other going in, and then we started to build together. I think it's sort of like a marriage. People say it's like you really do get to know each other much more closely, and like a marriage, it's not always easy every day because you realize in close contact that like, hey, I do things that annoy you, and you do things that annoy me, and we're different people because we've gone through life with different lenses. And the most important thing that I could say is just, it's such a cliche. It's like be open and honest about it, right? Do not let. This is one of the pieces of marriage advice that I also think about. There's this concept of hit send now. So if you have an issue, a tension, do not wait. Do not think, oh, I shouldn't bring it up. Like it'll get better, or whatever. It's a small thing. Hit send now on sharing that. Just write an email and just hit send, because it's always better to get the small things out on the table before they turn into big things. Like I've talked to a lot of people who've also gone through, whether it's breakups or co-founder breakups. It's always because like smaller things start to, they like you don't talk about them, and they just grow in resentment, and then one day it's like a giant thing, and it's really hard to resolve at that point in time. So if you just don't see conflict as a bad thing, just hit send now on, it's like, it could be even small. It's like, hey, you made a remark, and that remark to the client made me feel a little blah. Like, just say it.
That's super nice. Also, that kind of like, I had a kind of closing question. I think that almost leaves with that. Like, if there's like one thing that you wish the audience would take away from today in terms of like how they lead or collaborate, would that be something different, or would this kind of slot into that?
I think I'll probably add one more different thing. I hope that we all take away that with AI, right? The biggest thing is it feels destabilizing. The thing that's hard is that it's new. We don't know what it means. What does it mean for our jobs? It's going to change how we work. I used to believe that I had this role and this was what I was supposed to do. Now AI appends it. People are doing layoffs. Will it replace what I do? These are all very destabilizing questions, because it makes us realize that whatever we're attached to, whatever we got comfortable with, whatever we thought of our identity may be changing, but change is really the only way forward. And the most important thing, I think, is not to let the fear of change compel us to hold on too tightly to what we thought we were or what it was like before. Because I think we have to loosen our grip on even the identity of who we are as designers or creative people. Again, maybe you thought your job was to design apps, but maybe now you can think of yourself still as a designer, but designing totally different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're gonna close there, but like take that one thing away. It's like don't let the fear take over. All right, Julie, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Really
so much,
fun.
guys, for
Thanks,
listening.
everyone.